Hi, this is Henry Sanders from Madison 365 at Real Talk, and have someone who decided to jump in to politics and to the school board. At that, I want you to introduce yourself.
Yeah, hi. My name is Ananda Mirilli. I work for the Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction. I am a special education consultant for the special education team, and also the director for the network to address disproportionality in special education, and also a candidate for Madison School Board seat number 5.
Why would anyone decide to run for school board? I mean, I've been around Madison for my whole life and been around politics my whole life. Mm-hmm. And school board is always the toughest place to run because you can never make people happy. Like you're always on people's kids. So why decide to run for the school board?
Yeah. So I first got connected to even understanding like school board and just governance for schools when my daughter started kindergarten. And I'm an immigrant from Brazil, so I had to learn the education system here. And by the time she was a second grader, she was experiencing overcrowding in the schools, 3 lunches ranging from 10 to 1 p.m., needed to have a lot of advocacy, specifically to try to move us from the building we were at Ellis to a building in Monona. And started attending school board meetings, and I started to giving testimonies. And there was one meeting, Henry, in particular, that the room was filled. Back then, we did not have people coming in every month, right? Like mm-hmm. Back then, it was not many parents coming in. And we filled the room with families, mostly brown and black families, a lot of children, very emotional testimonies about what they were experiencing in the schools. And there was one board member who's no longer on the board, and she said, "Thank you for being here, but a lot of parents are experiencing the same." And later on that night, she voted against the move of the building. And I said, I need to have your job because you really not being in the perspective that we need and making better decisions for our children and our families, in particular our families of color. And so I ran the first time in 2013, right before the race began. So before even New Year's, I was mischaracterized as a pro-voucher and struggled trying to share that I didn't even know what voucher schools were. Mm-hmm. And no, I'm for public schools. I'm really trying to better the outcome for our children. And that left a really bad taste in my mouth. I came in third and vowed to I'm gonna do my advocacy work, which I always been, mm-hmm. What I always done. And over the summer, Ali Mudro and I had some really heart-to-heart conversations about running for office and about what it's like to be a woman of color in politics and how people treat you. And we decided that we wanted to do, if we're going to do it, we're going to do it together. We're going to support each other, and hope that Madison was had increased their readiness for us, basically, And there's too much at stake. It's about our children, and it's also about our communities. So there's a lot at stake. So it needs to happen.
How did you say you have a daughter?
Yes.
How did your daughter feel about her mom being in the limelight, running for the school board? I mean, you're not just running, your family's running. So how does your daughter feel?
So the first time, it's by the time a week before the primary, she was like, "I'm done. I want this to be over. Can you please not do this anymore?" I was bringing her everywhere to the events, and it was very stressful. This time around, she's a teenager. She's 16. She goes to La Follette. She's a sophomore at La Follette. And it's a little easier in so many ways. I don't have to worry about feeding her.
Wait, I want to get that clear. You said a 16-year-old.
Yes, she's 16.
Someone has an 8-year-old, 8 going on 15. Your 6-year-old is easier than...
The 16-year-old is easier than the younger. Yeah, because, she can feed herself, and she can take the car if the event is taking too long. Right. And so in some ways it's easier, but, she does miss it. And she, I have to remind her, it's going to be this hard thing for 4 months. and then it won't be as hard. There'll be other things that are hard, but I really need to be focused. And, of course, there's a lot of things that happen in a race that you don't expect. So it's like you're never fully prepared for what's going to happen. So expect her to to kind of feel totally embodied of this. It's hard. But she came to a forum on Saturday and she said, Mom, like I got to tears a few times.
Being proud, she was proud?
She was proud. And that feels good.
That's powerful, right?
I grew up in a most beautiful cities in the world, Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, and one of the most dangerous also with a lot of oppression. And coming here meant that I had to break a lot of cycles in my family, right? Oppression of women, violence, domestic violence, sexual assault, and not only transform that, interrupt that, but also be able to expose her to a positive, strong, and brave motto. I think that, I'm good. I'm like, okay, I did something,
Right.
So.
You were saying earlier about the vouchers. Were the progressives who were the ones who were saying that you were for vouchers?
Yeah.
I'm asking because when I ran for the legislature years ago when I was a young man, and I was working for the Chamber of Commerce, and I remember all the progressives were saying because I worked at the Chamber of Commerce that I couldn't relate to black people, or I was a business guy and didn't know the community. Wow. And it was the progressives who were really aggressive that I was at the Chamber of Commerce. When the people of color loved it, I was there, the first being there, but the progressives were the ones who really put their view on me. So was it progressives who were the ones saying that towards you about the vouchers?
Yeah, it's hard to say like the progressives because I think that folks range, but it came from a faction. It was with the Menskys were the ones that said it, and we know the Menskys were connected with so many other progressives, so that either perpetuated that narrative or did not interrupt the narrative, knowing that I was working at the YWCA Madison at the time. I was doing restorative justice work. I was receiving county assistance at that time. I lived in a 2-bedroom apartment in the south side of Madison. There's nothing around me or about me that would hint that I would be someone involved in a pro-voucher movement or against our public schools, other than someone with a deep commitment to better the schools, understanding the school data. So I was already talking about data before the Race to Equity report, specifically around suspensions and expulsions. And so talking about racial disproportionality in disciplining, and saying we're not doing as good as we think to our brown and black children. We need to do something about it. And one of those things made them assume that I could only be destroying the public schools.
And I bring that up not to take shots at the progressives and wonderful work that they do. It's just that people always wonder if you're not from Madison. They're like, well, why is Madison doing so bad when it comes to people of color? And that's just symbolic of the disconnect of sometimes I think people try to put people of color in a box and try to view us a certain way, and when that's not the reality. But so it's just it's a weird way how Madison works sometimes, and it's just symbolic to me of one of the problems Madison has when it comes to interacting with people of color.
Yeah, that's a really good point. No, I think it's a really good point, and also because we have now before the primary in pretty much every race we had a conservative, and we also that are also firing shots against us. It's interesting to who is in our corner, right? We get shots from the conservatives, we get scrutiny from the progressives. So who do we belong to, or where is our space, or who is holding a space for us? Right?
That in a nutshell is the Madison dynamic, totally. So there's been a lot going on in the district, and a lot of racial incidents. What's your take on? Because you have almost 7 incidents over the past 6 months. I mean, this is I've been in Madison my whole life. I've never heard of it like this intense. Now it's always happened. I no doubt about that, but it's never been to the forefront like it is now. As a school board candidate, how do you address those issues? Because if I'm a parent and I have my kids in the school district, that would worry me, right? Like, why would I want my kids in that school? So how do you address those issues?
So we're in a different time, right, where people really can't grasp the level of threat, in particular, the level of threat that people of color experience in our daily lives, right? And a lot of it's from, like, the current national administration, right? Like, we've seen in 2016, like, an increase in mental health issues for our students. Different groups of students at different times because of different reasons, right? You see a lot of stress for Latino students given the narrative around immigration. You see a lot of stress for Black immigrants and Black and Latino immigrants because of the narratives around the country, their countries of origin. So, we definitely navigating a different time where sort of, it's okay to say and the things that are in your mind that are not, they're disrespectful and often contradicts the values that the schools or the school districts are already set up. And working for the state, I saw that the increase of those incidents too. I felt like I have got calls personally from smaller districts and parents and sharing, like, what they were experiencing that is not very different than Madison, even though, they're not districts with a capacity that we have in Madison. And what makes it, I think, much more problematic in Madison is because we have the exposure. I mean, like, we have that capacity. We're well over a majority of students of color in our district. If you're not a person of color, it's getting harder and harder for you to be secluded and not get exposed to what's going on, both nationally and locally. And so the question is, like, so one, are you surprised? It's like, no, because of what's happened on a national level, but also my own experience attending UW-Madison. I have a master's degree in education, leadership, and policy analysis, which it trains a lot of the administrators, a lot of the principals, a lot of the people in education and leadership. And every time the race conversation would be happening in the classroom, either people would look at me or they would, have all sort of fragility around having that conversation, wanted to detour around or cry or be upset, complain with my advisor. So I got called a couple of times at UW-Madison School of Education, one of the best schools of education, because, getting in trouble for wanting to talk about race, or making sure that we're, centering the conversation around race. So it doesn't surprise me from an aspect of our teachers have not received the training and the education necessary to really understand the complexities of using racial slurs. That is to say, that should not be an excuse, right? We are in 2019, and my daughter even said that, like, we're in 2019, and like, this should not be happening anymore. And we needed to have responsibility in the district, and we need school board members to model that, which we haven't really seen it, right? I mean, you're listening to, or you attend, or you're listening to the board meetings when issues about race or how this or that is impacting students of color, you really don't see a really good analysis, when talking about families of color or Black and brown children or Hmong children or indigenous children. You really don't see an analysis. So, in leadership, you don't have a whole lot of modeling happening. So, you end up seeing that in the schools, and the district needs to be responsible for it and hold, and be accountable for it. And it's unfortunate that it showed up very late. It's really unfortunate that it showed up very late.
What do you think we should do about the 11-year-old child who got beat up in the schools, or dependency for read the police report, 80-page police report? What do you think we should do as a district to deal with those type of issues, even if you go by what Ish said, that that the guy was innocent? There still was a physical altercation of an 11-year-old child in a school where other students see an 11-year-old child get physically handled.
Yeah.
The mental and psychological damage that can do to other students or people who are looking at the Madison School District and say, I'm not going to put my kids there. I'm going to move to Mount Horeb or something like that.
Yeah.
How do you deal with that issue?
I mean, a crisis in our community, to me, I mean, we first needed to like own it, right? It's complicated than when we shuffle the responsibilities.
Do you feel like it's been owned?
I don't think to the degree that definitely did not happen fast enough. You know, I think that gets problematic. I think Jen made some attempts to find some language in there. It gets complicated because it's, you know, now it's so inflamed, right? And she lost the control of the narrative because it's, you know, people are really upset. And then, of course, then you see the video and then you're like, get even more upset. And then you hear the Ishmael's decision and you know, like it just keeps getting more upset, you know, and then you hear how the mom couldn't, you know, felt intimidated for filing a police report, and then how Ishmael tried to get her record, her CPS records, which was
unbelievable.
Like, what, you know, and then you think about the history of this country, and you can't like not lose sight of that, right? Like we have always, Black and brown and Native Americans have always experienced this level of criminalization, this level of surveillance, this level of doubtness. So you have to come from this place. Like, you know, this is not one little incident that this one person is mishandling, right? We have always done this to our Black and brown children and then the other communities of color. So you have to contextualize in the history of this country. And so own it, you know, and profusely apologize for what happened and listening to the families and listening to the community that was impacted. And I'm not sure that none of those things have happened, you know. I know that there is potential some legal situations happening, but aside from that, we're human beings, and like, where is that space where human beings are coming together and listening? There's been some questions to both Ali and I regarding to the last school board meeting, and I was there, and it was just disheartening to hear the pain and the sadness. Because it's not, you know, there's a thing that happened with the 11-year-old, which is horrific. And then there is the thing that is happening to all Black children, you know, and people's babies, you know, and people's love. And that, you know, it's been really hard. Yeah. And I really hope that white parents understand that they should also understand that it's hurting everyone. Right? It's also hurting our white children to see, you know, the way in which we're mistreating Black children.
Yeah, you know, I think it used to be where they used to call white flight, where people would come and they could move to the suburbs. They can't do that anymore, right? So you have to deal with these issues. Like Sun Prairie, percentage-wise, has more Black folks than Madison does. My point is that white flight doesn't exist anymore because where are you going to move, right? There's people of color everywhere. So it's interesting to see how, from a school board perspective, how you can deal with some of those issues because, you know, if I'm the mayor or I'm the superintendent, one of my big things, my tax base is leaving, and how do I keep them here, right? So I think that's a big issue. Do you think that the schools districts have a comprehensive plan of how to deal with these issues?
No, I don't think we do. I mean, so I was working for Madison School District. I used to be the community engagement coordinator for central office, and before 2016, we started seeing the rampage of students needing mental health support in their schools. We tried to come back and say, like, we need a plan. 2016 is going to happen. What is our plan to support our students? Because we're going to see more and more of that. And there wasn't a plan. So 2016 happened. We had to put a lot of things together, resources for particular our immigrant families. So we don't. There's a lot of things in this district, and I think in a lot of districts that happen reactionary. And then often what I've seen is that we use that opportunity to say all the things that we have done, which is like, that is not helpful. Like, you're in pain right now. This thing just happened. Own what happened. No, like, just own that, like, you did not do the thing that you're supposed to be doing, which is protect this child, make sure that she was safe, and whatever other things it could have happened, because my understanding that this is also students that were receiving special education services. So there are laws, obligations that that needed to happen in this incident that I don't know if to the extent that those things were followed, and then learn from it and like don't let this happen again.
So you're gonna sell me, okay? Right now,
Yeah.
you're gonna sell me. So I'm about to right. You run the
sell
school
you
board.
the school
It's
board.
you're running for the school board, not me. So okay, I have a child. Child of color, and I have opportunity to pick my child in Madison or move to Wanakee or Sun Prairie. Why send my child to Madison School District? What would you say to a parent? Because you have to get questions like this.
I do, and
Yeah.
I have always, especially after 2013, but before that I was really involved in my daughter's school, and people would always be asking, like where should I send my child? And definitely over this last couple of years, I'm getting calls from people that I don't even know that well, saying which school, like I'm buying a home, where, where should I buy so I can, make sure that I send my kid to school. And the tools that we have now are the data, outcomes of data, and then we have the stories, the narratives, or the qualitative information that we hear. And it has got much more complicated. That question has always been complicated for me, and it definitely has got much more complicated because I can't not honestly tell a Black family, "Don't worry, your child will be okay," because we have those standards and those values, and because we are going to do everything to make sure that your child will learn, will feel safe, will feel belonging, and will graduate on time and ready for college and career and community. I can't honestly say that, especially when I look in all the data that I have, right? So Madison right now, the Madison School District is the best school district compared to over 450 school districts across Wisconsin, if you're white. At the same time, it's the worst school district for Black children compared to the same 450 school district in Wisconsin. So I can't honestly say, yes, I got you, because I can't. That was part of why I was really involved in the schools. That was part of why I worked for the school district and really did not see that I could really do much. And that's the reason that I'm running for school board. However, I do know that I need everyone to be hands on deck if we are serious about changing the outcomes for this school district.
One of the last few questions I have for you.
Sure.
That was good answers.
Thank you.
Because I think it's real. I think there's so many people who are having this conversation about what do we do? Do I send my kids to that school or where do I go? I mean, I think the white community will be shocked how much these people of color are having these conversations daily about where do I put our kids, or are my kids safe or not safe, or they get educated. I think the white community will be really shocked how much these conversations are happening.
Yeah, and I was walking, let me give you this example. This happened last week, and this was before the video came out. I was walking outside of the building. This person that I always see that works in my building but not at DPI, she said her sixth grader, who now attends Badger Rock, called her crying because they were thinking about moving her to Whitehorse, and she did not want to go to Whitehorse. And the girl is Googling schools to attend, private schools to attend. And then the mom who, is a worker, single mom, is struggling to trying to figure out how am I going to pay private school for my daughter who is, really smart, who's, succeeding in school, who, is potentially, and she didn't use those words, but from what she was explaining, might be someone that could benefit for a talent and gifted program, and now is faced with, what just happened, and definitely like those questions are coming to people of color and not to white educators in the same way.
Right. So 6 years from now, let's assume that you win, right? Mm-hmm. You're in there. 6 years from now, you decide to leave. What would you want your legacy to be? Mm-hmm. What goals would you have accomplished being on the school board that make you feel like you've actually accomplished something? What would that be? That's
a really good question, because I think we do, as school board members, we need to hold a vision for a positive vision for the school district. I think it's important to understand the issues and to, provide the criticism and the critical analysis necessary, but it's also important to hold a vision for our community. That our schools can be, part of our community, right? Not the separate thing. And, that the same ways in which we value our bike paths and our public market and our music festivals, like we need to have pride of our schools, not for just one group, right? Mm-hmm. For all children that attend the school. So we need to hold that vision. And, thinking about a legacy, I think is doing business differently, right? I can't think of any program, because I don't believe a program will shift what we have currently. We've tried to do many programs over the last 35 years. Mm-hmm. Some people think, may say that is even longer than that we're experiencing what we're experiencing, the disparities that we're experiencing. But we do need to do business very different than that we do now. And for that to happen, we really need systemic changes. And we needed a school board that it's competent in this particular issues and understands, have the connections with the community now, not after April 2nd, right? I think that is important. And that have built credibility to have people calling up and saying, this and this and this, it's happening. Help me do something about it, and be able to follow through before it gets to the news, before a horrific incident happened, right? And that is sorely needed. We haven't had this level of capacity in a school board ever before. So we have an opportunity to really shift in how we do business in education in Madison. And I hope Madison makes a good decision on April 2nd.
Before I go, why don't you tell the people why should they vote for you? Why are you the candidate?
Okay. So I have both a school experience when I was leading the site leadership at Nostromondo Community School. I have worked for the school district, so I bring that experience as well. At the same time, I've worked for our nonprofits, many nonprofits in town, so I have the community and the programming experience. And now I work for the state of Wisconsin, so I really brought in the expertise and the experience, and I'm hoping to bring those things along the side that I'm also like a mother in our district. And my daughter, very much like many students in our school districts, have struggled in elementary school and in middle school, and definitely now Ella Follett. So we need school board members that have a breadth of experiences, but also understand deeply the experiences that our families, and particularly our families that have been historically marginalized by the school district. And so April 2nd, I hope you vote for Ananda. Thank you.
Thanks for coming. Thank you.